Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. In the last class, we were talking about the Four Noble Truths, more on an introductory level, how it started, and so on, and correlating a little bit with our practice. But this Four Noble Truth is the main centerpiece of Buddhism. Everything the Buddha taught for 45 years, everything falls under the shadow of this Four Noble Truth. So up to now, everything we talk about is oriented on a practice basis. And we have come to the last leg of a practice. So while you are trying to prepare to adapt yourself for the threshold that is coming between the mundane world and ultra-mundane world, between the Puthujjana, already worldling, and Ariya, noble person. While you are preparing yourself, adapting yourself for that, I think it would be nice to know a little more detail about this Four Noble Truths. Okay, we will approach on a traditionally based on the tradition, on the turning of the wheel of Dhamma, the Dhammacakkappavattana, the first sutra the Buddha taught. And Buddha taught these things often here and there, along with other sutra too, while he was teaching full foundation of mindfulness. Satipatthana Sutra, it's also included in it, and while in Abhidhamma, okay, the more detailed account of Dhamma, detailed analysis of Dhamma, or some call it special Dhamma. This is also included in it. So we will touch all aspects of it, but it will be based on the first sutra, Dhammacakkappavattana. And here these Four Noble Truths are, the first one is the Noble Truth of suffering. Number two is the Noble Truth of the cause or the origin of suffering. And number three is the Noble Truth of the cessation of suffering. And number four is the Noble Truth leading to the way of the cessation of suffering, the ways to the cessation of suffering, the Eightfold Noble Path. Those are the four. In these four, the first two, okay, suffering and the cause of suffering, they are in the mundane world. It belongs to the mundane world. And the truth of the suffering, the first Noble Truth, is the Dhamma that one needs to thoroughly understand. Okay? Thoroughly understand theoretically and as well as experientially. Really understand. That truth needs to be understood thoroughly. And second truth is Nirodha Samudaya Sissa, the Noble Truth of the origin of suffering, which simply call craving, Dhamma. And this Dhamma or this noble truth is the Dhamma that one must abandon. The first truth is one need to thoroughly understand. The second truth is one must be abandoned. And these both are in the mundane world, Lokya. And they have a relationship. The relationship is causal relationship, cause and effect. This craving or tanha is the cause. And this dukkha or suffering is the effect. Cause and effect, that is their relationship. So, if one wants to totally get rid of the suffering, which is the effect, what do? One must eliminate the cause. As simple as that. If you can eliminate the cause, if you can abandon the cause, there will be suffering no more. That is their relationship. And the third and the fourth noble truth, cessation of all suffering and the path leading to the way to the cessation of suffering, they are called ultra-mundane Dhamma. It belongs to the ultra-mundane, Lokuttara, not to the Lokiya. You cannot find them in the Lokiya or in the world of Nama and Rupa. Lokiya means the world of mind and matter. Lokuttara is the world beyond the world of mind and matter. So this Nirodha Sissa, this cessation of all form of suffering, is also known as Nibbana, popularly known as Nibbana. When you say Nibbana, it means this is the end of all form of suffering. In a way, the ends of Nama and Rupa. There is no Nama and there is no Rupa in this Nibbana Dhamma or Lokuttara Dhamma. And in here, this third noble truth is one that need to be realized. Okay. The first one is to thoroughly understand. The second one is to abandon. And the third one is to thoroughly realize. And if you don't come to the realization, okay, you would never know about it. It is beyond time and space. It is beyond Nama and Rupa, mind and matter. But it truly exists. And it has no condition. Because Nama and Rupa is the world of condition. And if there is no Nama and Rupa, that means there is no condition. It is the unconditioned world. And even though we say that world, it is not in space, it is not in time. Okay. And there is no matter and there is no mind. That is the Nirodha Sissa that one must experience. And the fourth noble truth is the path leading to the cessation of suffering. And this is also said to be Lokuttara Dhamma. It is not in the world of mind and matter, not in the Lokiya. What it really is these are the 8 constituents or the 8 kind of elements or 8 Dhamma. Okay. We all know what the Eightfold Noble Path is. That's it. And also, we are practicing, even right now, okay, wherever we are practicing about this right deed and right speech and the right livelihood and effort and mindfulness, concentration, right thought and right view. We are practicing, we are doing it right now, and still we say it doesn't belong to the Lokiya or mundane world, it belongs to the ultra-mundane world. So they need a little bit of clarification to understand that. Yes, we are practicing, okay, especially Satipatthana, Vipassana. If we practice precisely and correctly, every observation is endowed with this Eightfold Noble Path. And in here, it is in a Lokiya. But one thing with what we are practicing is we are not in a perfect situation. We hit here, we miss here. We have a little wrong turn there, we have a little wrong turn there. We are trying to become perfect in that. So what we are practicing is, yes, we are practicing Eightfold Noble Path, but we don't have it yet. Okay? But as Buddha has shown us the roadmap, we are trying to walk on the road. And that road we are walking on, they are there, but it might not be any perfect aura. It might not be in 100%. So what it is you practice and you practice and you practice. And then what happened was, finally you come to the threshold, okay, Gotrabu. Insight knowledge, they call it Gotrabu. Jnana. And when you come there, that is a threshold, you pass over there and your mind and matter cease to exist. Which means at that time, as the mind and matter cease to exist, your object of observation cannot be matter and mind, cannot be materiality and mentality, because they ceased. So, but there exists one. What it exists is called Nibbana. So at that moment, the object of observation is Nibbana. And at that moment, when it ceases to exist, when the object becomes the Nibbana, in other words, that is the moment when one has stepped into the domain of Ariya, noble ones. At that moment, that person also has the Eightfold Noble Path. But that Eightfold Noble Path is in the perfect order. He has attained the perfect order of Eightfold Noble Path. Only at that stage, at that level, you have Eightfold Noble Path. Before we are trying to develop, we are trying to practice again and again so that we have the perfect order of Eightfold Noble Path. That's why when we say Eightfold Noble Path, you have Eightfold Noble Path only when you become Ariya. That's why Eightfold Noble Path is called Lokuttara Dhamma, the Dhamma of the ultra-mundane realm or the world. So we are practicing, we are doing, but it is that we are trying to get the perfect order. And how do? We developed it. We observe again and again. We multiplied it, we developed it, we developed it. That's what we are doing. Every observation is we are developing that Eightfold Noble Path. That's why the Fourth Noble Truth, Eightfold Noble Path, is called, is something you must develop. So these Four Noble Truths have their own assignment that one needs to do. The first Noble Truth, suffering, must be thoroughly understood. Second Noble Truth, craving or Dhamma, must be abandoned. The third Noble Truth, Nibbana, must be realized. And the fourth Noble Truth, Eightfold Noble Path, is something one must develop. So they have their own things that one need to do. Okay. Understand, abandon, realize, and develop. So those are the Four Noble Truths. So in here, in the Dhammacakkappavattana, Buddha taught us quite in details about what this thing is. Today, let's touch a little bit about the first Noble Truth. A little bit means as much as our time permit. The Noble Truth of suffering. And in here, the Buddha said in his discourse, birth is suffering, okay? Old age is suffering, and death is suffering. Birth, old age, and death is suffering. And here, what is birth? One need to know. Okay. Birth in Pali is called jati. So as a birth, there are many different kinds of birth in this cosmology of the living beings. One thing is called the egg-born or the womb-born. Living beings are born through the womb in an egg form. That is one kind of birth. Another one is called instant-born. Okay? In the egg-born, of course, you already know, they come in from the tiny little egg and slowly go. When you come in, you have to grow. You have to wait about 16 to 20 years to be fully grown and develop in all aspects, including your brain function. That is the first one, the womb-born or the egg-born. That's one type of birth. Second one is spontaneous birth. The spontaneous birth is you are born, but instantly you are fully grown and in full function in every aspect. That's called spontaneous born. It just suddenly appear. Those kind of things are like deva, celestial being. When they are born, they are instantly born in full physical and mental capacity. Humans are a part of the womb and the egg born, and they slowly grow. Animals, look at it, they are from the egg and the womb. And also, hell beings, they are also instant born. And some of the animals and then birds, they are egg born or the womb born. Egg and a womb. And there are another type of birth. It's called the moisture born. You don't need anything, you don't need any parents, you don't need any egg, you don't need any womb. Just from the moisture and the right temperature and pressure in that environment with some material product, living beings are born. Some little small insects, you know, and you have seen it. There's nothing under a rock, under a piece of rock, a little decay, it's just a moisture. You pull it up and there's something there. That's called moisture born. These are different kind of birth. Moisture born, womb or egg born, and then spontaneous born or birth. Different kind. So we are now, of course, dealing with the human. So let's go and touch with the human. In the human life, according to Buddhism, life starts at the moment of conception. Life starts at the moment of conception, jati. Okay. So when under this Dhammacakkappavattana, birth means from the moment that you are conceived, at the moment of conception, basically it's an egg. Okay? The egg from the mother is fertilized. That's an egg. And stay in the womb for about 9 months, or sometimes 7, some 8, some 9, mostly 9, and then 10. And then it's come out of the womb. So that period, from the moment of conception till you come out of the womb, is called birth in a human. But life begins at conception. And when we say birth, that is the period of premature born will be about 7 and some up to about 10. That is the birth period. So that is called birth. And in Buddhism, birth is suffering. So just look at it, how can a birth be suffering? Okay, sort of we can argue in many different ways, this and that. But let's see how Buddhists look at it. In the moment you conceive, there's a consciousness and a certain quality and types of materiality is already there. Okay, more in a very, very fine liquid form, which will be the seed of what is going to grow, and a consciousness. It's already there, it started. And then slowly it grows throughout 9, 10 months in the womb. Gradually grow this, grow that, and every part and limb of it. And some say, oh no, inside the womb, it might be really cozy, warm. The temperature is constant, and so on and so forth. Some people say and argue in that way. Yeah, it may be so, but there's not much freedom in terms of space. You're just in there. And also slowly and slowly as the fetus become bigger and bigger, there's less and less room, more and more pressure. That's one thing. And also, whatever the mother ingests, it affects the baby inside there. If you take a lot of alcohol, and if you're an alcoholic, if you're a druggie, when the baby is born, it's already addicted to alcohol and drug. And also when the mother is drunk or high, the baby itself also have affected. But if the mother takes a lot of spicy food, hot food, then it affects the baby. You'll find it, the baby even kick around a lot more when you have these kind of things. So even in the womb, there is a suffering, lack of space, pressure, and every ingredients or chemicals that the mothers put in has the positive or negative effect. So during that whole period, there is a suffering or dukkha. And also the moment you are born, when the moment you are born, the baby came out. The baby doesn't come up with a smile and a little giggle and a laugh. They came out with a cry, very loud cry. They were totally shocked into this space where there is air and the temperature is uneven for them. So that's why birth is suffering. And then the next one is old age. In other words, aging or decay. So from a point of view, from that moment, little baby, to you just keep on growing and growing and growing. Oh, there's no decay. It is a growth. That's the way we look, we perceive, and we accept. It's growing and growing. up to about 20, and up to 30, then it becomes full. All the capacity, physical capacity, mentality become totally full around 30. And then starting from about 50, 60 range, it starts to deteriorate, grow. Only then we say grow old. From Buddhist point of view, every second is you are growing old. Every second is you are growing old. From the moment you came out, 10 seconds later, you are 10 seconds older. You are growing old, you are growing old, you are growing old. That is old age, aging. That aging is irreversible. It's going on. Okay. That is, we are talking only on the physical side. Physical side growing old, but we divide it two zones. Oh, this is great, growing, getting better, and this one is getting old. Yeah, you can say that way, but you are growing. Every second you grow is you are a second closer to death. That is what is happening. And although at the later age, 60, 70, 80, what happened? Your skin starting to dry, wrinkles, your eyesight starting to fail, ears starting to fail, hair become gray, tooth knocked out, fall down, and so on and so forth. You don't have to paint it. Everybody knows the process. That's one thing. Do we want it? No, we don't want it, but still it happens. That is called growing old or decay or old age. That's only the physical aspect of it that is suffering. And also mentally, even from the child part, okay, in the earlier part, they have to depend on the parents for their food. Every little thing they need, they have to depend on it. And then when they become toddlers, again too, there's a lot of tug of war with the world. And then when you are in a younger age, you have to listen everything to the parents. Some agree, some don't agree. Based on the mentality, there's a conflict. Teenagers, you know how you have to really fit into the environment. And when you get older, getting a job, getting a degree, making money, having family, and so on. We don't need to elaborate. You can think about the whole process, how a person grows, and everything is a struggle. Everything is a struggle. But one thing was, we try to think about little pleasure and pleasant moments, and we sweep all these negative things under the rug. We hide it. We hide negative things under the rug, and we only talk about what the great things and good things and how life is great and good. Yeah, great, good, life is good. You live in a big mansion, throwing the parties, lots of friends. Seems like okay. But a few years later, you found out that couple split. Before they split, they are about 4, 5, 6, 7 years. There's a struggle, but they just put the facade on the face. There's a mental age, mental suffering throughout the ages, through the growth it is going. Birth, aging. And then throughout there's a lot of sickness, illness, so many things going on. But again, all these things, while we put it under the rug and we try to put the best foot possible and put a beautiful face and smiling face and thinking that life is worth it. But the reality is you cannot hide. Every moment is growing old. Every moment has difficulties which we don't like to admit because you are weak if you admit it. And then death. Everybody is scared of death because you don't want to leave this life and at the same time you had to leave. and you don't know where you will be, that's also scary. Okay? You have to leave the loved ones, you have to leave the property, you have to leave everything behind. It's a very scary moment. That's why birth, old age, and death is suffering. That is how Buddhists put it. On the human life cycle, that's how we are going. So the Buddhists put that, and then also the Buddha said, sorrow and lamentation, okay, pain and grief and despair, they are suffering. Actually, sorrow and grief and pain itself is suffering. Okay? These are the suffering that is suffering. Dukkha, dukkha, they call it dukkha, dukkha. And these mental pain of various levels. What is sorrow? It's a worry and anxiety. How many people live without worry and anxiety in their life? Think about it. And there are moments it becomes too extreme. You even just cried out aloud. Especially in some culture, they express more. Some culture, they try to bear it underneath, putting a brave face. Only when you're alone in your bedroom or in the washroom, then you might go out and cry and sob. Just the cultural condition. But we all go through sorrow and lamentation. Pain is physical pain. Okay? Is there anybody who hasn't got a physical pain? Even you just trip over something, there's a pain. On your toe, on your ankle, you fall down, the knee bruise, and so on. That pain is also suffering. These are very obvious pain. These are called obvious suffering. Obvious suffering is, the term is called dukkha, dukkha. Suffering, suffering. That's the one type of suffering. The Buddha showed us 3 types of suffering. We are only dealing with the first type of suffering, dukkha, dukkha. Translating, suffering, suffering. In actuality, that word suffering in English is not sufficient to cover the true meaning of dukkha, what the Buddha said. We'll deal with it later. So pain, and then grief. Grief is mental pain. One way or the other, we have all went through despair, stressed. Whether you are 20 or whether you are 30 or whether you are 60, I'm quite sure we have experienced these kind of stressful and despair and depressed periods. Relationship, job, money, family, and so on and so forth. Never escape. But always, we don't talk much about it. Only very few people just say out everything. Okay? They're more like an open book. But most of the people, they just bear it underneath. Only whisper to a few close friends. And in front of everybody, with a big smile and a brave face, we pretend life is okay. And that's how we hide. And that's how we refuse to admit the nature of suffering, dukkha. Life is dukkha. We refuse to admit. And as we have tried so hard and so often, we actually believe life is not suffering. Life is beautiful. Life is great. What we are talking about is the fact of life. We are not trying to present or making a spin. These are actually happened, and everybody had experienced it. But we are ingrained in a culture and tradition not to admit these things because it is weak, it's a failure. but you have to put a brave face. And eventually that is so strong, we actually believed what we try to believe ourselves. And we began to take it as truth. Life is great, life is good. And here we are talking about facts. It's based on the perception of a person, these can change. So despair, sorrow, lamentation, pain and grief and despair, those are suffering. These are the obvious suffering. Again, dukkha, dukkha. Birth is also dukkha, dukkha. Old age is dukkha, dukkha. Death is dukkha, dukkha. And also Buddha extended to live with somebody that you don't like or you hate, or to associate with somebody you don't like, you hate, is also suffering, dukkha. Very obvious. Okay. Again, I'm not saying everyone, just to make a point or an example. Couples living, husband and wife, common law marriage, whatever that is, people who try to share their life together, so to speak, for both good and bad. When the honeymoon is over, what happened? They are still there, living there, just for the sake of the job, or for the sake of the friends, or for the sake of the families, or for the sake of the kids. They bite their tongue and they live on. But at the same time, what kind of pains, mental pain they are suffering, living with somebody that you don't like. When the honeymoon's over, that is the time it starts. And at the same time, in job situation, under a big organization, there are so many people. And some people you get along, some people you don't get along. There are some people you just can't take it. But regardless, that's a job. You don't have the power to fire that person, and you don't want to get fired. Just say every day you are going there and facing and dealing and doing with that person, the job, what kind of pain that is. That's what it means by living with someone that you don't like, that you don't love, is suffering. That's number 5. Number 6, losing the people that you like, love, your loved ones, losing them is also suffering. Number 6. So losing them is, the obvious one is, you love your parents, one time they passed away. You love your grandparent, they passed away. You love your kids, sometimes the kids even passed away before you do. Whenever they depart, that means you lost them. And at that time, what kind of pain struck you? Think about it. And also, there you are. You have a very beautiful relationship, marriage, and your spouse passed away. You have a beautiful years of 20 years, 30 years, and they passed away, they departed. What kind of pain you go through? And you have a great relationship in a younger age, but for some reason one has to be transferred to another city, another town, another country, but at the same time you can't afford to let go of your job. You part, there's a pain. That is what is meant by losing the people that you love and like. It's also suffering. Those are the very obvious ones. And all these are obvious suffering. Dukkha, 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 dukkha. We all have gone through, and nobody would deny that this is suffering. And then the next one is called the 5 aggregates of suffering. And here it becomes a little bit more difficult to understand or difficult to even accept the 5 aggregates as suffering. Up to this point is all great. And what is the 5 aggregates? Okay. 5 aggregates is basically, let's start from the word self. Self is you, me, I. Okay. What is this self made up of? This self is made up of this body, physical body, matter, and the consciousness or mind. Mind and matter, or body and consciousness. That is self. And this body and consciousness, in Pali is called rupa and napa. Rupa is the matter, nama is the mind. Okay, rupa is physicality, that is matter is simply matter. Let's just, for the sake of communication, let's call it all made up of atoms. Rupa is rupa. This body is made up of atoms. Your body is made up of atoms. Every living being is made up of atoms around here. Okay. And in nama, okay, the mind, Buddha split into 4 different groups because they are quite distinct and they have a very distinctive function on their own. That is the reason Buddha split the mind to 4 groups. The first group is called Vedana. Vedana, feeling and sensation. That can be stand alone and it can be treated by itself. You can understand that very clearly. Feeling or sensation. What it is we all know, we all can experience. Undeniably, we have experiences, pleasant feelings, we have experiences, unpleasant feelings, and also neutral feeling there are, we neither feel pleasant or unpleasant. As it is neutral, we don't even know. Those are the feelings. That feeling is one of the part of mind. One part of the mind is called feeling or Vedana. And second one is called perception, Pinya. That perception is also a part of the mind. And it is put separately because it has its own distinctive function. And we are operating it all the time. All the time. We don't even know, we are not even aware that process is in operation. Okay? Forget about us. Let's go to the little one, 2 years old, 3 years old. Whenever they come across and see something, okay, they really look at it quite intensely. Okay, first of all, let's say they have a doll. As soon as they see a doll, okay, the parents say it's a doll. And suddenly they try to recognize with certain marks and characters. Okay, if it looked this way, if it looked like that way, and if there's this and that, and colorful and pretty and bright and so on. And they put that information into their memory bank. The way they see it. Some kids might be colorblind, so they can't put the color into their coding. Just a little example. The way they see it, they put some marker on that object and they store into the memory. Why? So that they could recognize that object when they see again. It's called making a mark, okay, on an object so that you can use it as a reference when you see the next time. To remember. That is called perception. That's called sanya. We are doing it all the time. That's just doing it, showing it on a little kid's level. And us too, we are always there. Sometime, okay, the way we look at it, you see new people. There are some people you are interested. When you see new people, you're introduced. When you're interested, you make a real marker. How tall, how short, how color, this, that, everything, gesture, behavior, and you marked it. And the next time when you see, you remember. There are some people they introduce, you have no interest, they have no interest to you. You introduce, hi, hello, how are you, shake hand, and you don't really remember how that person looked like because you don't put that marking on it. Because disinterested, or it may be you may never see that person again. And when you try to recall, you can't recall it. That no sanya, no marking is done. So that is the function of perception sanya. So that is also another part of mind. Feeling is one, sanya is one, and the third one is called sankhara. In English, it's called mental formation. Mental formation is, to keep it very short and precise, because these things, if we talk just on one word, we can talk for hours. Sankhara is, to understand in a different way, whenever a consciousness arises, there's a consciousness, one consciousness, and associates or mental associates, a bunch of other factors that have their own function of its own. They arise together. And altogether, the Buddhas have taught us, show us, there are 52 of them. 52 of them, and these 52, they don't arise all together, they arise in a group that they can get together with. 52. And out of the 52, we already know two. One is Vedana, feeling. Another one is perception, sanya. And these are mental associate, but Buddha took that two out and dealt separately. Because whenever you come in contact with anything, an animal, a bird, a person, a table, a chair, there arises a certain feeling in you. You like it, you don't like it. You hate it, you don't feel any way. Whenever you are in contact with any object, animate or inanimate, that feeling arises all the time. Automatic, there's no exception. That's why Buddha take it out and deal separately. Instantly, it's happening all the time because we are facing physical or mental object all the time. And whenever we face, that feeling arises all the time. And at the same time, right after the feeling, that perception kicks in and then make a mark of that object. Store it in your memory for future references. So those two are automatic right on the onset. That's why Buddha take it out. It is common to all and dealt separately. So there remains the 50, because altogether 52. That remaining 50 is called sankhara, or mental formation. That is how your mind patterns and mind process will be formed. These 52 has the very deep hand into it. And these doesn't mean they are good or they are bad. They are also good mental factors, they are also bad mental factors. Very simple example, love is one of those mental factors. They are good, of course. Love, we like it. And then there's a hate, that's also a mental factor. Okay? So mental factors could be good, could be bad, or could be neither. But these two mental factors, I pick it out because these two cannot arise together. If there's a love, hate cannot arise. If there's a hate, love cannot arise. And these mental factors arises together with a certain type of consciousness. So a consciousness arising with hate, you can rest assured you won't see any love mental factor. You won't see any kindness in it. That kind of a nature, just to give an example. So these kind of emotional things, love, hate, jealousy, envy, joy, happiness, all these emotions, quite a bunch. They are all mental formation because they have a certain hand to make the life pattern of you. They have their own functions, they have their own power. Based on which one is arising, your life flows in that way. And your actions are totally, respectively, correspondingly expressed according to these mental factors. And then there are some other things, as an example, okay? Wisdom, that's a mental factor. Mindfulness, it's a mental factor. Okay? Concentration, it's a mental factor. Attention, it's a mental factor. Okay? So there are many things, but in general I always say a bunch of emotions because those are the ones that we experience mostly and we know quite clearly. And they are all the time arising and bombarding us. Something like wisdom and something like concentration and something like mindfulness, they don't arise quite often. We have to purposely develop, we have to purposely nurture to develop them. That's why they fall into the eightfold path: concentration, wisdom, mindfulness. What are they? They are to be developed. Only when you develop, they become powerful. Only when they develop, consciousness associated with them can arise. Otherwise, those kind of consciousness are far and wide. The most type of consciousness arises are with a whole bunch of emotions, good emotions and bad emotions. But those kind of things are called sankhara, mental formation, altogether 50 of them. So that is a third of the mind. And the fourth is called vijnana. In English, it's consciousness. And in here, most of us, as soon as we hear the word consciousness, we have our own perception of what it could be, what it would be, or how we believe it. Based on a belief, we draw a conclusion, or we set it and we accept it. That is our point of view on consciousness. That is how we take it. But according to Buddhist definition, what is a consciousness? What is a vijnana? Okay? That consciousness, that vijnana is not a mind yet. Mind is the combination of the four. Combination of the feeling, perception, some of the mental formations, and a consciousness. When those fours are put together, it's called mind. So consciousness is totally separate. In fact, it is called vijnana. Vijnana. And from the Buddhist definition, what is this vijnana, consciousness is? It is simply a phenomenon, simply a process that has the ability to know an object. A phenomenon or a process that has the power and the ability to know an object. That is consciousness. So it is not a person, it's not a being, it's not an individual. Not a man, not a dog. Simply a phenomenon. Okay. I quite often use the example of the motion detector. Okay. Motion detector has the power and the ability to detect the motion. If there is no motion, that is not walking. If there's a motion, it comes alive and it sends a signal. Beep, 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 beep. Just like that, if there is an object, that consciousness arises. If there is no object, that consciousness cannot arise. That consciousness cannot exist without an object. That consciousness is the power or the ability to know the object. If there is no object, there is no knowing. If there's an object, there's a knowing. Just showing you a different angle, different perspective, point of view of what consciousness in a Buddhist sense. That's it. It's the ability or a power, a phenomenon or a process to know an object. But of course, objects are all the time arising all around. So it seems like there's consciousness, zillions of consciousness arising. So as the zillions of consciousness arising in a very short span, it seems like to you it is the same consciousness. It is the same me, the same I, the same you, the same us. Because they are operating at a speed it's without and beyond our comprehension. That's why it looks like one and the same. But in reality, these consciousness are vibrating like a billion in a second, billions of consciousness in a second. And they have objects to associate or identify with. So that is vijnana. So the Buddhists divided the mind into these four aspects: Vedana, Sanya, Sankhara, and Vijnana. Feelings and sensation, perception, mental formation, and consciousness. So the first one is what? Rupa, form or matter. And these five are called five aggregates. Five aggregates. And the Buddha said these five aggregates are suffering. In other words, mind and matter is suffering. In other words, is what we call self. You, me, I is suffering. In other words, everything in the universe is suffering. So we will elaborate about it on the next Dhamma talk about this five aggregates, why Buddha said they are suffering. So may all of you be able to understand the noble truth of suffering as detailed as possible so that you can apply it in your mode of adaptation to the threshold which is going to the realm of Nibbana. Sadhu, 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 Buddham bhajami, Dhammam bhajami, Sangham bhajami,